I spent a lot of time in the Facebook forums, like watching MSPs and IT people discuss things. And I remember when I was younger that there was this theme that you have an engineer and then you have the business people. The business people are like politicians, like they really don't know anything.
Yeah.
They're the people who drank themselves through college and this is how they landed. Right. And, the engineers, we're the ones who worked our butts off to get our degree
everyone else,
or learned on our own, or self-taught. And we have all this knowledge. And if we could just convince the business people to do the right thing, it would be great.
Yeah. If we could just teach them what they needed to know. If they would just stop and learn at least the first 3 layers of the OSI model, right?
Yeah,
something.
So I as I advanced through my career, I started realizing, okay, these finance guys, these finance ladies, they're really sharp. There's a lot going on, this as I've had to submit budgets and figure it out, I was like, man, the complexity of this, to try to get all this stuff lined up, man, that's insane. And then I kept going. And I started realizing that I had a knack for leadership and for culture development. And I started becoming less of an engineer and more business minded. And then when I started my own company, I was like, I got this, but I'll have some people to help me out and mentor me along the way, because that's what I need. And just the marketing component of business alone requires a freaking PhD and a magic wand.
Yes, and the magic wand, most importantly.
And I try to grab a hold of sales and the sales process and how to close deals. It's not about walking in a room and just talking to somebody. That's a key component. But getting into that room and what to do after you're out of that room and the strategy behind that is, I've been working on that for 6 years, people, and I still feel like I barely have a handle on it.
Yep.
And we just got out of our meeting with Garrett, and it's just constantly, it's like, man, that's something I didn't think about, or that's something I didn't know. And having capable people on staff to show you how much farther you have to go in the area of business.
Yep.
And so you see the CEO out there who's just trying to he's kind of like that Columbo feel, they feel kind of dim-witted. No, they're just really good at compartmentalizing and finding really good people to care about things that they cannot do.
Yeah. Well, here's both, I think, the great thing and maybe the challenging part about IT is it is very binary, right? I mean, we deal in ones and zeros. And when we start to break problems down, there are many times that we can get down to the point where it is really clear. This is the option you need to choose and not this one. Or you can at least very specifically define the pros and cons of all these different elements. But when you get into business and specifically leadership sort of roles, those very objective analysis get really, really hard. In our meeting just a few minutes ago, we were talking about some stuff we got coming up for a conference, and we're trying to pick between 2 different options, and there is not a binary element to this. It is very subjective on which path to go down, and those are challenging problems just as much as those detailed firewall logs are, or those ACLs are in the firewall. So we have got to realize that those business people are making tough challenges, tough decisions, just like the technical people are. And unfortunately, I do think there are a lot of technical people, maybe at least I know for me, younger in my career, I didn't appreciate the challenge that the business people had to conquer every day to be successful.
Well, I think some of it is that IT is a bit siloed, right? The engineers sit there and they work tickets, they work with these machines, and that's their life. And when they do something really well, they pat themselves on the back and they move on to the next problem. And they don't have to know the rest of the business. They just got to keep these lights on. They've got to keep these things clean. They got to keep these machines up and running. They have no need to know what the SQL queries are inside this server and what they're doing for the business. Yeah. They just need that hardware to stay on. And so what's the number one KPI for an IT department if you talk to somebody? It's uptime.
Uptime, yeah.
What's the number one KPI for a business? Cash flow.
Yep.
And so why don't IT people care about cash flow? Because it's not a priority. As long as their budgets get approved, what do they care?
Yeah.
And I think MSPs have this same mentality. As long as you're approving the contract, what do I care?
Yeah.
And if instead you would put on a little bit of a business hat, not much, and to say how much of the portfolio I am pitching here is helping my customer meet their KPIs. And we talk about this over and over and over again in our weekly updates and in our podcast, but caring about what the person across your table cares about is fantastic. I think it's Gina who said, to Marco, who said, make the person across the table from you a hero.
Yes.
Lift them up. Don't lift yourself up, lift them up. Make them look like a hero. How can I help your business succeed? How can I help you be a better parent? How can I help you do what you want to in life? How can I help you succeed in your career? When you take that mentality, your conversations change and everybody wins. Because if they reciprocate that, then you have a really good scenario. So watch improv guys and artists. They are really good at this. They're setting each other up for jokes. They're setting each other up for success.
Yep.
And when you come into a business situation and you're talking about engineering, and I say, hey, I can keep this server up 100% of the time. I just got to kick all my users off of it.
Yeah.
And it's a joke amongst us as engineers. So if it wasn't for the users, we'd be fine.
This would be great stuff.
And so we got to remember, if it wasn't for the users, you wouldn't have a job.
Yep.
And we say it tongue in cheek
of that sometimes,
but there's a little truth to it. If people would just get out of our way, we would be able to do our jobs better. But your job isn't uptime. Your job is cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And that took me too long in my career to figure out. My job is not technology as an engineer. My job is cash flow.
Yes. And so
I am just a part of that. And if you forgot and you don't see how you relate to that, you got to dig deeper.
Yeah. The engineering is going to power the business. So, as techie guys, we'll get around and, inevitably it leads to something. How did you do that? Were you really able to, migrate all that over at once? Or we get into these, I don't know, just show off conversations or they're really interesting. How did you do that? You were able to migrate that data, whatever it is. We've got to realize that our business needs to empower our business as the technology business needs to empower those same type of conversations with your customers. So when that CEO of maybe they're not a, giant corporation, right? It's a 20 employee company and they're off at some business conference because they go to conferences just like IT people go to conferences and they're sitting around talking. Are they going to be able to say, my business went out and we had, a special type of engagement with 50 of our clients and increased revenue by 40%, off this one little campaign. And the group of business people sitting around, that person is going to look at them and go, really? How'd you do that? And you want the business owner to be able to just, sip their coffee and raise their eyebrows and go, well, we made some stuff happen, right? You probably aren't going to get the credit you deserve, right? I'll go ahead and put that out there right now. But the business owner is going to know, yes, my technology team came together. I had a problem with my business. They helped me solve it, and I did this thing. And when they can talk about the thing that they did, the technology is going to be, a footnote in it, all right? But what they were able to do with it is going to be the impactful part that impacts their business, that referral that keeps coming up, so many times in conversations. It's going to drastically define that. And then long-term, you are going to be part of that business success because they can think about all the great business things they were able to do with you they don't remember the fantastic data migration that you did at midnight over some holiday weekend last year. It just doesn't stick.
Yeah. You want to be that employee that people brag about, or you want to be that vendor that people brag about. And I have, get me at any conference, ask me about my times, or I have helped a business come up with a new strategy to involve technology that changed industries. Been there, done that. There are solutions that I developed in the photography industry that are used to this day to sell photos. Not because I built some cool new app or anything like that, but because I worked with a business savvy individual and said, here's what's possible with technology. Why don't we do this? It's cheap. And we ended up with something that increased their sales by 15 grand per project they did.
Yeah.
And that got copied by other photographers. And that is something, and that was just me being Adam Walter, helping out a friend. If I was a MSP, I'd be like, I will build this system for you. Here's what it costs, and here's your return on investment. I know for a fact if you walk in and you're going to get this. It's a technology solution. You don't need to know how it works. I will put it together. It's out of a box. It'll be fine. And it's all technology that every MSP has in-house.
Yep.
And I've done this multiple times. I did it in the marketing industry where we had some SQL servers that were processing polygons for mailing routes. And I found a way for the analysts to be able to start a query, run home, open the query, and were able to run something that took 16 hours. Usually they had to leave their laptop at work or they had to stay until it finished at the end of the day. All I did was set up a terminal server, people.
Yep.
I set up a remote desktop on a VM server. Now, this is before that was an everyday thing. Don't get me wrong. It was cutting edge at the time. There wasn't even licensing for what I was doing.
Yeah.
Technically,
that was easy days.
Microsoft hadn't released licensing for this yet.
And so copy them.
But because I was able to do that, I was able to allow for a higher culture at the workplace. And then because we put it on, then we upgraded to a VM cluster with some Xeon processors. That made the SQL queries just fly. And now they're able to process like 5 times more people in or queries in a day than they were able to before. And your people could still go home. So no new hires, increased throughput, higher quality of queries because they could catch an error and rerun it. But whereas before, like, well, is this worth restarting the query?
Yeah.
You know? And so it was a win-win-win. And to this day, it's a normative thing. I'm not saying I invented this, but I was on the cutting edge for SQL processing via SAS and RDP way long time ago. So you as an engineer are able to engineer solutions that can transform a business. But you can't do that if you think uptime is the number one thing.
Well, I think that's a great example because the things that you've mentioned are very common tools right now. So we all, can wrap our brains around those. Even though when they were early on, they still weren't. I mean, they were really cool, but it wasn't like this, magic box. The IT guys looked at that and go, all right, yeah, I know what's going on there. We're just, moving it over here. The processing is there. I'm just passing screening keyboard information. It all made sense to us, right? It was very technical, very practical, but the use of it in the business environment is what made the big impact. For us personally, we look at it and we think it's really cool, but the business was able to get engaged in this one and get some real value out of it. And that term, return on investment, ROI, all right? That was like the first business term that I learned. But I really, I knew the definition, but I didn't interact with that. That wasn't something I really did. I just knew what it was. And from a technical perspective, I think a lot of MSPs or just, technical people, we shy away from that because we don't understand what it all means. We can't calculate the return on investment, so we don't get involved with the ROI calculation. But here's the cool part about it. Your customers, your business drivers, they do understand ROI. They do understand all those technical elements, and they're missing pieces though. And you have those pieces. So bring those to the table, complete the calculation, and now you get to be a part of that. You can say, yes, this is going to increase ROI. If you just do it off the cuff, no, you're probably going to be wrong. But when you work with the business, you will be able to say, yes, we've calculated this number. You and your customer are going to be bought in on that, and you define the value.
And start with the assumption that their job is at least as complicated as yours.
Mm-hmm.
Some of their jobs are really easy. I mean, just like you have low-end, level 1 techs, in the business, there are level 1 personnel who are just following process and getting things done, and they have the same complaints. But if you walk into the room with another tier 3 employee and you're sitting there with a project manager or a business analyst, and you're like, okay, tell me about the problems that are going on in your division today. Or strike up a conversation over beer. That's where a lot of my solutions came from. Conversation over beer.
Yeah.
And or over a lunch, and sat there and just learned about what they were doing. And it takes a little while, just as if you were trying to teach somebody who didn't know anything about firewalls, how they work with the complexity to them. It's going to take a couple situations.
Yes.
Couple drinks, couple lunches. And eventually, as you get to know their world, you as an engineer, because of the way that your brain works, are going to start solving problems. Like, I hear you talk about how you have to constantly stay after for those SQL queries. We got you a really powerful laptop. It's just not good enough.
Yeah.
What if I built you a VM? And what's a VM? And then now it's your turn to explain things. And be like, and then together they'll be like, okay, if I could put my SaaS license on your VM, how would that work? Like, okay, let's try it. So we spin up an instance and we try it out. And then all of a sudden, holy crap. Okay, here's what we can do now. And you're both sitting there together and you say, okay, well, if that's the way it works, then here's what I can do to improve it. I can actually put you on a bigger processor that's going to be much faster. I can allocate more resources to this instance. Can you tell me, like, what is you need? He's like, I need as much memory as I can get. Okay, I've got 32 gigs free. Is that can be fun? Holy crap, you have 32? I'm only at 8 on my laptop, and I felt like I had a lot. Yeah. Welcome to the server world. They don't know, and you don't know. And so if you see the business as this other thing, this annoyance that's kind of in your way, you're never going to solve problems for them other than the ones that are in front of you. You want to be the person that solves the bigger problems, focused on cash flow. Because I was able to improve the SQL situation, because I was able to improve the photography sales, I helped them with cash flow. Yep. And when I help them with cash flow, they want to do that more. They want more of that. They got to taste. Is there any other options for this? And suddenly you're neck deep in business analysis.
Right.
And remember, this is not even at the CIO level, people. This is an engineering business analyst level. Yes. This is your mid-level employee. This is not a leader in the organization doing this.
Yeah, you can be really well equipped to do this. Many of you are. So here's a really silly example, but I think it lines it out in just a few basic points. So I went ahead and clicked the link in the email, right? So I got something from AliExpress, right? And I knew it before I clicked it. And sure enough, they're running their marketing stuff. It's the specials. And so I've got one giant page of all this stuff you could get from AliExpress. And the engineer in me is just curious. So I'm scrolling. And I see this little thing pop up several times. There's these really small, little Bluetooth enabled, battery powered thermal printers, like receipt printers, and for some reason I'm looking at that going, well, and it was interesting. They were cheap, and I'm frugal. I'm trying to redefine my finances there. But I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, what could I do with that? It just seems really interesting, and I don't have anything to do with that. But that's in my repertoire now, right? So you have tons of those, thousands of those just floating around. And as you talk with your customers, things are going to pop up. There's some business out there that's got people running around. They're like, if I could just put a detailed sticker on this when I was right there, then that would solve all these problems. And your brain's going to go, oh, we can get you a little battery powered printer, and you can actually print that from your phone right there while you're standing wherever. And that's going to change their business. They're going to go, really? I don't have to run back over here and log. I can do it right then. That's going to save me like 30 minutes every time I do that. And I do that 5 times a day. You're going to put a couple of extra hours in my workday because you give me this little battery powered printer. Yes. Now you've empowered their business, and your brain is full of those. That's just the one that popped to the top of my mind in this. You're overflowing with those real business stuff, not silly Bluetooth printers, but real stuff that you can empower your customers with. But you've got to see that business focus. Yeah. You've got to find the outlet for your great technology.
And it's all about not assuming that you're smarter than the business people and know everything that they need to know. It comes down to with being curious and allowing yourself to be educated by very intelligent people who are solving very complicated problems that are keeping you employed.
Yeah.
As an MSP, what is it your client is doing that is creating the funding that allows them to pay your contract?
Yeah.
How are you helping them with that? And if you don't know, be curious. Ask in the next meeting. Be curious about what they're doing. How can you help it? And because I constantly get asked, how do I get my 10,000 solutions in front of the client so they can pick the right ones? Like, you're not going to. You're going to talk with them and take the 10,000 solutions in your head and decide which ones fit. And you're going to negotiate together how that looks. And as you do this more and more, you're going to have a knack for it. Yep. All this is the doctor's office. Typically, they like to have these things. Oh, this is a photography studio. Typically, they like to have these things. And so you can take that 10,000 solutions and maybe you can narrow it down to 1,500 solutions. And you can say, hey, have you implemented, on-site sales? Have you implemented large storage arrays with backups? Have you, and you can go down the list and they can be like, oh, we don't have any of those things. Well, here's what it's done for clients in the past. I saw one client increase their revenue by $15,000 per contract.
Yep.
I saw another client, and then they can do the math now. If they need to pull out a small business loan to build this thing, they will, because they know it's going to improve their revenue. And so it's not a matter of sales versus business, it's not about engineering versus business. It's about business and engineering and how to work together to form solutions. Because companies that do that are the companies that win. They're the first ones to accelerate, and then everybody else copies them. They become innovators. They become industry leaders. And as an IT person, you're part of that. And if you're not part of that, you're holding them back.
Well, and so I was talking with a member this week, and this statistic came up, and I have no idea where it came from. I hear it several places, and I keep looking for the source. So if you find this source, let me know. But the statistic is it takes it's 7 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than to maintain an existing customer. All right. So if you know where that comes from, please let me know, because I've been quoting it and I don't like quoting things where I don't really know the source, but it seems to be general knowledge. So if you've got customers and you want to increase your stickiness, that's one thing. But if you want to increase your revenue from those existing customers, you think, hey, I've already got these guys. They're already paying me. How about I get them to pay me more? All right. If you want them to pay you more, why don't you help them make more? Yep. Because if they're making more money, they're going to be very willing to pay you more. But if all you're doing is raising your cost, just, hey, here's the price increase. Things got more expensive. I'm sorry. The price went up. The price went up. The price went up. And you're not able to show any value for that. Eventually, they're going to go and start shopping based on price. So if you want to make more, help your clients make more.
I'm going to put this into context for you MSPs out there listening to this. You have vendors that you see at trade shows all the time. And you can break vendors largely into 2 groups: operational efficiency and profit generating. So a profit generating tool is something that's in addition to your stack that you're able to sell to generate more revenue. Operational efficiency will allow you to save time freeing up resources to do the same. We at Humanize, we are a profit generating tool. If you use us, you will generate more revenue. If you use like an alert ops or one of these other tools, that is an operational efficiency tool. They're going to save you time and allow you to hire fewer people or do more with less. What kind of MSP are you to your clients? Are you operational efficiency or are you profit generating? You can do both. Most MSPs sit in the operational efficiency seat and they will never budge from it. That is all they are. And so they will have to nickel and dime and beg and have to prove themselves how they're saving time. Yep. But what if you could also flip over to the other seat and say, here's how I'm making you money? Then you become different. That's the business mind at work. The engineer mind will always talk about operational efficiency because we're really good at making things better. But you also have a mind that's capable of driving profits at a client if you just take the time to learn the business and stop seeing it as the enemy.
That's a really good perspective
for today.
Yeah.
I really want everyone to show back later.
Classify you. That's really good, Adam.
How do you
need
classify
to think about
you?
That. Yep. How do they classify you? I like that one.
Let's check in next week. Maybe I think we're going to have some really cool people on next week. I just confirmed it, so I'm bumping it up in the schedule. So you need to tune in next week for next week's podcast. It should be pretty awesome.
All right.
Thank you, and we'll see you then.